The NBA playoffs this year are approaching the end of the line as the NBA Finals get underway in a week and almost every other team is already at home settling into the offseason. This year's playoffs were as wide open as it's ever been, and quite a few teams had a very realistic chance to make a deep run. But while injuries hampered a few of those teams' chances, other teams were simply held back by their stars not rising to the occasion, which brings us to today's video. Today we'll be discussing the 5 star players that greatly disappointed their teams in the playoffs, performing well below their standard, and contributing in a large part to them not accomplishing their goals. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I'd also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first star player that disappointed everyone in the playoffs this year is Devin Booker of the Phoenix Suns. If you were to tell any random NBA fan on the day of the season opener this year that the Suns would get swept in the first round of the playoffs, they would think you were an insane hater, because the Suns entered the year as one of the heavy favorites to go all the way. They put together a big three that was arguably more talented than the best 3 players on any other team. But of course, making things work on the court isn't always as easy as it is to make things work on paper, and the Suns learned that the hard way this year when they ran into Minnesota in the first round. By doing what the Suns did, they sacrificed depth because they believed their star players could do most of the work, and in Booker's case, he didn't really hold up his end of the bargain until it was way too late. In many people's eyes, Booker was the best shooting guard in the NBA, and if not the top spot, he was for sure one of them. Yet, through the first 3 games of this series, he was struggling to find a rhythm, putting up just 18 points, then 20 points, and then 23 points, all in blowout losses, while shooting subpar from the field and from 3. He put up a big-time 49 points in Game 4, but by then the team was already down 3-0 in the series, so it was too little too late. The next star player that disappointed in the playoffs this year is Paul George of the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers were another team viewed as heavy favorites for a good chunk of the season after their addition of James Harden had them rolling for a couple month stretch. Unfortunately for them though, Kawhi Leonard's knee injury held him out of 4 of the 6 games in their first round series against Dallas, which meant everyone else, especially Paul George, was going to need to step up and take on more of the workload. When the Clippers needed George to play his best basketball, he played some of his worst though. In Game 3, the series was tied at 1-1, and the winner was trying to swing the momentum of the series in their favor, but George put up just 7 points, shooting 3 of 11 from the field. After tying the series back up at 2, in Game 4, the series was anyone's for the taking again, but in the closing 2 games, the Clippers lost each of them by double digits, and Playoff P was chucking tour dates, shooting a combined 10 of 31 from the field in those last 2 losses. George is now a free agent this summer, but after a showing like that, it's hard to buy into him being a max caliber player anymore. The next star player that disappointed in the playoffs this year is Darius Garland of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Garland was an all-star in 2022, but you would never have guessed that if you were a new fan watching him play for the first time this postseason. Since Donovan Mitchell's arrival in Cleveland, he and Garland were supposed to be one of the best all-star duo backcourts in the league, with the creativity, shot creation, and playmaking skills to lead the way. But only Mitchell held up his end of the bargain this year. I'm not going to pretend I know his mindset going into each game, but Garland just never looked confident in himself most nights, and he deferred to Mitchell way more than was necessary. When he's locked in, Garland can be a nightmare to have to defend because he is so quick and shifty off the dribble, he has such a natural feel for finding the open man or getting to his spots when the opportunity presents itself, but in both the series against Orlando in the first round and then against Boston in the second round, he seemed to be second-guessing himself a lot. Garland only ever scored 20 points in 3 of the Cavaliers' 12 playoff games this year, and his best game of the 30 points that he put up in Game 4 against Boston happened to come in the game that Donovan Mitchell was out due to injury, which only further begs the question of whether something needs to change for him to regain his confidence. The next star player that disappointed in the playoffs this year is Karl-Anthony Towns of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Towns and his Timberwolves team are still alive at the time that I'm putting this video together, but Game 4 is about to go down, and they are already on the brink of elimination, losing 3 straight to Dallas in the conference finals. Until this point, the Timberwolves have had a very promising and exciting emergence, led by Anthony Edwards, who is becoming a legitimate alpha on a contender before our very eyes, but in order for them to succeed like they have been, Towns has had to take on a lesser role, and even in this lesser role, he has still disappointed, especially in this series against Dallas. Throughout the entire postseason, Karl-Anthony Towns is averaging 18 points, shooting 45% from the field and 35% from 3, basically as mediocre as it gets for a guy with all-star talent. Then you dive deeper and you see that the Wolves' worst minutes have consistently been with Towns on the court, as they outscore opponents by just 0.8 points per 100 possessions with Towns on the court this postseason, but then when Towns goes to the bench, the Wolves have outscored their opponents by a whopping 17.9 points per 100 possessions. Against Dallas, Towns has been dreadful, shooting the ball 28% from the field and just 14% from 3 too. And with a berth to the NBA Finals within reach, Towns has played his worst basketball. And finally, the last star player that disappointed in the playoffs this year is Jamal Murray of the Denver Nuggets. This is an inclusion I really was not expecting to have land on the list at all, because pretty much every other year that Jamal Murray has played in the playoffs, he's earned a reputation as one of the league's biggest risers in big moments. Just last year, Murray was looking like one of the best guards in the NBA as he went on a ridiculous tear on the way to helping the Nuggets win the title. But this year, he came all the way back down to earth, and then some, unfortunately. In the first round against the Lakers, he played decent, scoring a consistent 23 points per game. He just didn't shoot the ball that well, but overall, they handled LA in 5 games, and he was making big plays as a passer too to balance things out. The next series is where his struggles became too much to overcome though, as the defending champions were sent home in 7 games in a hard-fought battle that may have swung in their favor if Murray was a bit more consistent. Murray played well in Game 3, and he had his best game of the series in Game 7, but in the other 5 games of the series, he just could not buy a bucket. He put up a whopping 8 points in Game 2, and he scored below 20 points in all of the other 4 games, which is a far cry from what we've grown used to seeing from Murray. Nikola Jokic can be a dominant one-man offense who scores when he needs to, and consistently makes the right passes setting his teammates up for good looks, but this year, Murray's playoff superpowers did not shine through. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you thought about these players' showings this postseason. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.